I held the handwritten note, my daughter Emily's elegant script doing nothing to soften the message. Mom, please don't try to join us in Venice. Robert's parents are taking us to stay at Palazzo Contarini, and it's a very exclusive arrangement. It's just for the four of us. You wouldn't be comfortable with their level of sophistication. Love you. I glanced at the antique key sitting on my desk, its brass surface worn smooth from decades of use. The same key that opened the grand doors of Palazzo Contarini, my home for 20 years before I moved back to the States. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert's mother, Margaret. Emily told you about our Venice plans? So sorry you can't join. These exclusive properties are quite particular about guest lists. I smiled, remembering the extensive restoration I'd overseen on the palazzo's frescoed ceilings. The artisans had lived in the East Wing for 2 years, teaching me everything about Renaissance art while we worked. Ms. Blackwood, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. The palazzo's caretaker, Giuseppe, is on line 1. Shall I tell him you'll take his call? Yes, Anna. And please get me the Venice airport director after. I picked up the phone, switching to Italian. Giuseppe. Come stai, old friend. Signora, there is a small problem. A family has somehow booked the palazzo through an agency. They claim to have exclusive access next month. Ah yes, my daughter and her in-laws. Tell me, is everything prepared as usual? Sai, Signora. Your private wing is ready, the art collection unveiled, and the gondolier service arranged. But these people, they are quite demanding. The mother-in-law insists on redecorating the blue salon for their stay. I thought of Margaret, who collected reproduction Renaissance art and claimed to be an expert. No changes to the salon, Giuseppe. And please ensure my mother's portrait remains in place above the fireplace. Of course, Signora. Will you be joining them? Oh yes, I said, watching my email ping with their confirmed booking details. Though they don't know that yet. After hanging up, I opened the elegant invitation I'd been holding onto. The Venice Biennale Committee was honoring me for 20 years of arts patronage and historical preservation. The ceremony would be held at, of all places, Palazzo Contarini. My phone lit up with Emily's message. Mom, Robert's parents are so excited. They say this palazzo is impossible to book. Only the most sophisticated people ever get to stay there. I looked at the photos on my wall. Emily at age 6, painting in the palazzo's garden. She had loved it there before status and social climbing became her focus. Before Robert's family convinced her that old money was the only acceptable kind. The intercom buzzed again. Ms. Blackwood. The Contarini Foundation board members are asking about next month's art acquisition meeting. Tell them we'll hold it as planned, I replied. The palazzo's main gallery should be perfect. I pulled up the security camera feeds on my laptop, watching the palazzo's current visitors admire my art collection. 20 years of carefully curated pieces, each with its own story. Stories my daughter used to love hearing. My phone rang, Robert's father this time. Sandra? Listen, no hard feelings about the Venice trip. It's just that these sorts of places have certain standards. You understand. I watched through the camera as a tour group admired the Titian I'd restored last summer. Oh, I understand standards very well, James. How's the agency handling your booking? Bit of a hiccup, actually. They're saying something about the owner's approval being needed for any changes Margaret wants to make. Quite inconvenient. Don't suppose you know anyone in the Venice property circuit? I smiled, fingering the ancient key. I might have a few connections. Really? I thought you'd never been to Venice. There's quite a lot you don't know about me, James. For instance, have you ever wondered why the palazzo's main gallery is called La Sala Sandra? Silence on the other end. What are you saying? Let's just say some mothers have deeper roots than their daughters realize. Will you be attending the Biennale ceremony next month? The private event at the Palazzo? Margaret's been trying to get invitations for months. How do you know about it? Because, dear James, they're honoring me. At my palazzo, where you're all planning to stay. The silence stretched longer this time. Your palazzo? For 20 years now. Though Emily seems to have forgotten the summers she spent painting in its gardens. I could hear him calling Margaret in the background, their urgent whispers carrying through the phone. Sandra, there seems to be some confusion. No confusion at all. You wanted exclusive access to Palazzo Contarini. You're about to get it, along with a lesson in making assumptions about people's sophistication. Within an hour, my doorbell rang. Emily stood there with Robert and his parents, all looking as if they'd seen a ghost. Come in, I said, leading them into my study where photos of the palazzo lined the walls. I assume you have questions. Emily's eyes locked on a picture of her younger self, covered in paint, sitting in the palazzo's garden. Mom, why didn't you ever say anything about owning one of Venice's most historic palazzos? You never asked. Too busy being impressed by the Valenciennes' summer cottage, as I recall. Margaret flushed. Sandra, if we'd known. Known what? That the simple mother you've been dismissing for years has been preserving Italian history while you collect reproductions. I kept my voice gentle, but the point landed. I pulled out a leather portfolio filled with restoration documents, architectural plans, and photos spanning 2 decades. This is what real sophistication looks like. Not booking through an exclusive agency, but spending years learning from master artisans, protecting centuries of art, keeping history alive. Robert's father cleared his throat. The biennial ceremony is honoring 20 years of art's patronage, I finished. Though I suspect that's not quite as impressive as Margaret's country club membership. Emily sank into a chair, looking shell-shocked. All those summers in Venice, I thought we were just renting. You thought a lot of things, dear. Most of them shaped by people who measure worth by price tags rather than substance. I opened my laptop, showing them the palazzo's live security feeds. See that, Titian? I spent 6 months working with restorers to save it. The frescoes in the blue salon Margaret wanted to update. They're from the 16th century, the gardens where Emily used to paint. They're in every art history book about Venetian landscapes. Margaret had gone pale. I told the agency I wanted to redecorate. Yes, Giuseppe mentioned that. He found it quite amusing, considering it took us 3 years to restore those rooms to their original glory. Robert spoke for the first time. Why didn't you tell us when we booked it? Would you have learned anything if I had? I countered. Or would you have just switched to bragging about your mother-in-law's palazzo instead of dismissing her? Emily was crying softly now. I've been so awful, Mom. So caught up in trying to impress everyone. The palazzo has that effect on people, I said. Either it teaches them true value, or it exposes their pretenses. Which lesson would you like to learn? James shifted uncomfortably. About our booking. Your booking stands, I assured them. With some adjustments. You'll stay in the family wing, where Emily used to spend her summers. The main wing is hosting the biennial committee. We'd assumed we'd have the whole palazzo, Margaret began. You assumed many things, I interrupted. That's rather the point of this conversation. I pulled out 5 invitation cards to the biennial ceremony. These are rather difficult to get. Margaret, you mentioned trying for months. She nodded mutely. Consider this your education in real influence versus purchased access. You're all invited, not as guests, but as my family. Though that depends on whether you still think I'm too unsophisticated to associate with. The silence in the room was deafening. The palazzo's gardens open at dawn, I continued. The light is perfect for painting then. Remember, Emily? She nodded, wiping her eyes. You used to have breakfast brought out to me while I worked. The staff treated us like family. They are family. Giuseppe has worked there for 30 years. His daughter's art now hangs in the main gallery, next to your childhood paintings. My paintings are in the gallery? Emily's voice cracked. In La Sala Sandra, named by the staff, though not for the reasons you all assumed. I stood up, walking to the window. So shall we discuss your Venice plans? The real ones this time? 3 weeks later, we stepped off my private water taxi onto the palazzo's marble steps. The transformation in my companions was already visible. Gone were Margaret's ostentatious designer logos, and James's booming pronouncements about exclusive access. Emily clutched my arm as we entered the grand foyer. I forgot how beautiful it is, she whispered. How did I ever take this for granted? Giuseppe appeared, greeting me with warm embraces and rapid Italian. I watched my daughter's face as she recognized him. Piccola Emily, he exclaimed. You have returned to paint our gardens again. She smiled, tears in her eyes. You kept my old easel? In its same spot, Signorina. The morning light still waits for you. Over the next few days, I watched them all rediscover the palazzo, not as tourists this time, but as family. Margaret abandoned her plans for redecorating, instead spending hours learning about the authentic Renaissance pieces from our resident art historian. James stopped talking about exclusive access and started asking questions about preservation techniques. I found him one evening in deep conversation with our restoration team, genuinely fascinated by their work. But it was Emily who underwent the most profound change. Every morning, she was in the garden with her paints, just like when she was young. Her Instagram posts about luxury travel were replaced by thoughtful sketches and stories about the palazzo's history. The night before the biennial ceremony, we gathered in the blue salon, the room Margaret had once wanted to modernize. Now she sat quietly, admiring the original frescoes with new understanding. "Mom," Emily said, looking at my mother's portrait above the fireplace. "Grandma would have loved knowing you preserved all this. She's the one who taught me that true sophistication isn't about ownership. It's about stewardship," I replied. "This palazzo doesn't belong to us. We belong to it." Robert squeezed Emily's hand. "I'm sorry we ever made you feel like you needed to prove yourself to us. The palazzo has a way of teaching humility," I said, watching the sunset paint the Grand Canal in gold. "It survived centuries of people far more important than us." The next evening, as I accepted the biennial honor, I looked out at my family sitting in the front row. They had learned more than I expected. Margaret wore a simple black dress, her usual flashy jewelry replaced by quiet elegance. James listened attentively to the Italian speeches, no longer boasting about connections. And Emily, my Emily, was sketching the scene, her artist's eye capturing not the superficial glamour, but the deep beauty of the moment. Later in the garden, she showed me her drawing. "I finally understand, Mom. What you've built here isn't about exclusivity or showing off. It's about preserving something precious for future generations." I hugged her, remembering a little girl who used to paint here without caring about status or social climbing. Sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones that remind us who we really are. As we stood there, watching the lights of Venice twinkle on the water, Margaret approached with unusual hesitation. "Sandra," she said softly, "thank you for teaching us the difference between having class and buying it." I smiled, thinking of all the summers ahead, of Emily's children perhaps painting in these gardens someday. "Welcome to the real Venice," I said, "the one that can't be booked through any agency. Because sometimes the most exclusive address isn't about who you keep out. It's about what you choose to preserve, protect, and pass on." The crystal chandelier in my daughter Emma's dining room cast perfect light over the Thanksgiving table. 23 people were gathered around the extended oak table, and I sat at the far end, the spot usually reserved for the least important guest. "Mom, could you pass the rolls?" Emma asked without looking at me. I reached for the basket, my simple cotton dress a stark contrast to the silk and designer labels surrounding me. My son-in-law Marcus sat at the head of the table like a king surveying his kingdom, his Rolex catching the light as he carved the turkey. "So, Margaret," Marcus said loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "Still doing that little, what do you call it, consulting thing?" The table went quiet. All eyes turned to me. "I keep myself busy," I said calmly, buttering my roll. Marcus laughed, that condescending sound I'd grown to recognize over the past 5 years. "Busy? Mom, you're 72 years old. When will you get a real job?" "Oh wait," he paused for effect. "I suppose at your age, it's too late for that." Laughter rippled around the table. My son David chuckled. My other daughter Lisa smiled into her wine glass. Even Emma, my baby girl, didn't defend me. "Marcus makes a good point, Mom," Emma said softly. "We worry about you. That little office you rent, those clients you mention but never talk about. We just want you to be realistic about your situation." I took a sip of water. "Realistic, I see." "We're not trying to be mean," Lisa added, exchanging glances with her husband Tom. "But you're living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. Meanwhile, you keep pretending you're running some kind of business empire." "I never said empire," I replied evenly. Marcus leaned back in his chair, warming to his subject. "Look, Margaret, I'm going to be straight with you because someone needs to be. You're embarrassing this family. My colleagues ask about you, and what am I supposed to say? That my mother-in-law plays businesswoman at 72? "Marcus," I started. "No, let me finish." He held up his hand. "I've built everything you see here. This house, I bought it. The cars in the driveway, mine. The lifestyle Emma and your grandchildren enjoy, all me. And I did it with real work, not whatever it is you pretend to do in that closet you call an office." My grandson Tyler, 15 years old and glued to his phone as usual, suddenly looked up. "Grandma, why don't you just retire? Dad says you barely make any money anyway." "Tyler." Emma's rebuke was half-hearted at best. "Well, it's true, isn't it?" Marcus pressed. "Margaret, be honest. How much did you actually make last year? 10,000? 15? The table waited. I could feel their pity, their judgment, their complete certainty that they understood my life. I smiled, the same smile I'd perfected over 50 years in business. Marcus, could you answer a question for me? He looked surprised. Sure. You're the VP of Operations at Titanium Industries, correct? His chest puffed slightly. Senior VP, actually. Just got promoted last month. Congratulations, I said genuinely. And the company is doing well? Exceptionally well. We just landed a major contract. Why? Just curious about my son-in-law's success. I took another bite of turkey. David, you work at Morrison and Associates, don't you? My son straightened. Junior partner. I thought you knew that, Mom. Of course. And Lisa, you're the marketing director at Prestige Cosmetics. Lisa nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. For 3 years now. Wonderful. It sounds like everyone at this table has done remarkably well for themselves. I dabbed my napkin at my lips. Marcus, you mentioned wanting to be straight with me. I appreciate that. So let me be straight with you. The room had gone completely silent. When will I get a real job? I repeated his question. Well, that's an interesting question. Let me think. I pulled out my phone, the new iPhone Marcus had mocked me for buying last month, saying I was wasting money at my age. Right after I fire you from yours. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's face went through several expressions, confusion, amusement, then concern as he registered that I wasn't joking. What are you talking about? He demanded. I opened my email and turned the phone to face him. This is the email I received this morning from my Chief Operations Officer. He's recommending the termination of several underperforming executives. Your name is third on the list. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. That's impossible. You can't. He looked around the table for support. This is ridiculous. Mom's having some kind of episode. Emma, your mother is confused. I'm not confused, Marcus. I kept my voice gentle. I'm Sir Chen, Margaret Rose Chen. Perhaps you've heard of me. David's face had gone white. Mom, Mr. Chen is the founder and CEO of Chen Global Industries. I finished. Titanium Industries is one of my subsidiaries. I acquired it 12 years ago. The silence was absolute. You're lying, Marcus whispered. Mr. Chen is. Everyone knows he's a man? I smiled. I never corrected that assumption. It was useful. People underestimate women in business, especially older women. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish when people think you're irrelevant. Emma's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. Mom, is this true? Tyler, Google Sir Chen, I said to my grandson. The boy's fingers flew across his screen. His eyes went wide. Holy. Grandma, this says Sir Chen is worth $3.7 billion. 3.9 as of this morning, I corrected. Good year. Lisa's husband Tom started choking on his water. Wait, Morrison and Associates. We just got a new majority shareholder last year. That would be me, I confirmed. Through one of my holding companies. You're doing good work there, David. Your last case brief was excellent. My son looked like he might faint. Marcus had turned an alarming shade of red. This is insane. You're trying to intimidate me with some kind of elaborate prank. I tapped my phone again. Siri, call Robert. The dial tone filled the room through the speaker. Margaret. A warm voice answered immediately. Happy Thanksgiving. I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Happy Thanksgiving, Robert. I'm sorry to bother you during the holiday. I'm at dinner with my family, and something has come up regarding Titanium Industries. Do you have a moment? Of course. Is everything all right? Could you confirm for everyone here that I am, in fact, Sir Chen, founder and CEO of Chen Global Industries? A pause. Is someone questioning that? Should I be concerned about a security issue? Marcus's face had gone from red to gray. No security issue, just a family matter. Thank you, Robert. Enjoy your turkey. You too, Margaret. And yes, for anyone listening, Margaret Chen is absolutely our CEO, and has been for 43 years. One of the finest business minds I've ever had the privilege to work with. I ended the call. Emma's eyes were filling with tears. Mom, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us? I did tell you, I said quietly. I told you I was consulting. I told you I had clients. I told you I kept busy. You all chose to see a confused old woman playing at business instead of listening to what I actually said. But the apartment, Lisa protested. The car. You live so modestly. I live comfortably within my means. I don't need to prove my worth through possessions. I looked directly at Marcus. Unlike some people, Marcus found his voice, though it shook. You can't fire me. I have a contract. I'll sue for wrongful termination. You can try, I said pleasantly. Though I'd read Section 12, Paragraph 4 of your employment agreement first. The part about grounds for immediate termination. Robert sent me the documentation this morning. Apparently, you've been using company resources for personal investments. Insider trading is frowned upon, Marcus. His face confirmed everything. Mom, Emma whispered, tell me you're not going to fire my husband. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She'd grown into a woman who sat silent while her husband mocked her mother, who raised children who thought dismissing their grandmother was acceptable. Emma, I'm going to tell you what my mother told me when I was your age. You can't build a marriage on disrespect. Marcus doesn't just disrespect me. He disrespects you every time he makes decisions without consulting you, every time he teaches your children that cruelty is entertainment. This is blackmail, Marcus snarled. No, this is consequence. I stood up, my napkin folded neatly beside my plate. Marcus, you have until Monday morning to submit your resignation. You'll receive 6 months severance, more generous than you deserve. I suggest you use that time to think about the kind of man you want to be. And if I don't resign? Then I fire you, and the investigation into your trading activities becomes official. Your choice. I turned to David. You're doing excellent work at Morrison & Associates. Keep it up, and we'll talk about making you a senior partner in the spring. David couldn't seem to form words. Lisa, Prestige Cosmetics is being acquired by one of my beauty brands. Your job is safe. In fact, I'm recommending you for VP of Marketing for the entire division. You're talented, and you've earned it. Lisa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Tyler, Emily, I addressed my grandchildren. I'm setting up education trusts for both of you. Full ride to any university you choose, plus graduate school if you want it. All I ask is that you remember, success isn't about looking down on others. It's about lifting them up. Emma was openly crying now. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I walked around the table and kissed the top of her head. I know, sweetheart, we'll talk. But right now, I have another Thanksgiving dinner to get to. Where? Emma asked. My building downtown. Every year, I host Thanksgiving for my employees and their families. 400 people this year. I try not to miss it. I smiled. They're the ones who helped me build this little consulting business, after all. I gathered my purse and coat. Mom, wait, David called out. We didn't know. We should have listened. Should have believed in you. Yes, I agreed. You should have. But I understand. It's easy to overlook people, especially when they don't fit your idea of what success should look like. I paused at the door. The question now is, what are you going to do with this information? Marcus slumped in his chair, his empire of arrogance crumbling around him. As I walked to my old car, a vintage Mercedes I'd restored myself because I enjoyed the work, my phone buzzed. Robert again. Everything okay? He asked. Perfect, I said. Though I might need you to expedite that Morrison & Associates partnership paperwork for David and fast-track Lisa's promotion. Family? He guessed. Family, I confirmed. They didn't know, did they? Not a clue. He laughed. Margaret, you never cease to amaze me. How did they take it? I thought about Marcus's face, Emma's tears, the shock rippling through that dining room. Let's just say, I replied, starting my car, it was the most memorable Thanksgiving we've ever had. As I drove toward my building, where 400 people who'd never underestimated me were waiting, I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's simply letting them see exactly who you've always been, and watching them realize they never looked. The Anderson family reunion happened every 5 years at the old estate in Connecticut. This year, 73 relatives crowded into the grand ballroom, champagne flowing, conversations buzzing. I stood near the window in my department store dress, watching my family celebrate their success. Aunt Patricia, my niece Jennifer rushed over, her designer heels clicking against the marble. I didn't think you'd actually come. Wouldn't miss it, I said, smiling. You look beautiful, sweetheart. She glanced at my simple outfit, and I caught the flicker of pity in her eyes. Thanks. The bar is over there if you want anything. It's open bar, you don't have to pay. I had raised Jennifer for 3 years when her mother, my sister, went through her divorce. Apparently she'd forgotten. Jennifer, come here. My son-in-law Bradley's voice boomed across the room, I want you to meet some people who actually matter. Jennifer flushed and hurried away. Bradley Thompson had married my daughter Rachel 7 years ago. He was a real estate agent, successful by most standards, pulling in about $200,000 a year. Enough to make him confident. Enough to make him cruel. Everyone, gather around. Bradley stood on the small stage where the band had been setting up. I want to make a toast. The room quieted. 73 faces turned toward him. To the Anderson family, he began, raising his glass. To success, to prosperity, to making something of ourselves. Cheers erupted. Now, I know we're all supposed to be nice at these things. But I believe in honesty, so I'm going to be honest. My stomach tightened. We've all done well. Jennifer just made partner at her law firm. Marcus over there just sold his company for $8 million. Rachel, my beautiful wife, just became the youngest VP at Sterling Financial. He paused, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. But then we have Patricia. The room went silent. Aunt Patty, he said with mock affection, standing over there by the window in her. What is that, a JCPenney special? At 70 years old, still working as a secretary. Still living in that cramped studio apartment. Still driving a car from 2005. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Rachel touched his arm. Bradley, maybe? No, honey, someone needs to say it. He stepped down from the stage, walking toward me. Patricia, you're the biggest disappointment in this family. Your sister Anne became a doctor. Your brother Robert built a hotel chain. Even your late husband had potential before he died. But you've done nothing. Accomplished nothing. You're an embarrassment. The words hung in the air like poison. My nephew Marcus cleared his throat. Bradley, that's a bit harsh. Is it? Bradley turned to face the room. She's been dead weight for decades, always making excuses. Oh, I'm happy with my simple life. Oh, I don't need much. Meanwhile, the rest of us are building empires, creating legacies. He looked back at me. What's your legacy, Patricia? Filing papers? Answering phones? I watched him, watched the self-satisfaction on his face. Watched my daughter look away, unable to meet my eyes. Watched 73 relatives stand silent, some embarrassed, some nodding in agreement. Are you finished? I asked quietly. Finished? I'm just getting started. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my colleagues ask about my family? Oh, and what does your mother-in-law do? What am I supposed to say? I smiled, the same smile I'd perfected over 45 years. You could try the truth. The truth is you're a failure. Interesting. I set down my water glass. Bradley, you're very proud of your real estate career, aren't you? He blinked, confused by the shift. I'm one of the top agents in the state. That's impressive. Tell me, where do you live? What? Your house? The one you and Rachel live in. Where is it? Bradley's chest puffed. Westchester. 4,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms, pool, 3-car garage. I showed it to you once, remember? You said it was nice. He said the word mockingly. It is nice, I agreed. Do you own it? Of course I own it. Well, the bank owns most of it, but I'm paying the mortgage. What's your point? Just curious. I pulled out my phone. The new iPhone my family assumed I bought on credit. What's your address again? Rachel spoke up, her voice tight. Mom, what are you doing? Humor me, sweetheart. Bradley, the address? He rattled it off, looking around the room for support. People were watching now, confused. I typed into my phone, then turned the screen toward him. Is this your house? He leaned forward, squinting. Yes, that's. Wait, why do you have the property records? Because I own it. The words fell like stones into still water. Bradley laughed, that same condescending sound. That's ridiculous. I bought that house 3 years ago. No, I corrected gently. You signed a lease to own agreement 3 years ago, through a holding company called Westchester Properties LLC. That's my company, Bradley. You don't own your house. You're renting it from me. The color drained from his face. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Mom, that's impossible. Jennifer, I called to my niece. You're a lawyer? Come look at this. Jennifer approached hesitantly. I handed her my phone, showing the property deed and the lease agreement with Bradley's signature. Her face went white. Oh my God. Aunt Patricia, this is real. What about Marcus? I continued. Congratulations on selling your company. Did you mention who bought it? My nephew Marcus looked like he might be sick. The investor who bought my company was anonymous. Through a firm called Anderson Capital Group. That's me, I confirmed. I thought the name was a nice touch. Paid $8 million, just like you said. Fair price. The room was dead silent now. And Jennifer, sweetheart, that law firm you just made partner at. Sterling, Mitchell and Associates. Jennifer swayed slightly. Please don't. I'm the majority shareholder. Have been for 12 years. Bradley found his voice, though it shook. This is some kind of joke. Patricia, you're a secretary. You live in a studio apartment. I'm the CEO of Anderson Capital Group. We manage a portfolio worth $2.4 billion. And yes, I do live in a studio apartment, the penthouse of the building I own downtown. I like the view. My brother Robert stepped forward. Patty, is this true? Every word. Robert, remember when your hotel chain almost went bankrupt in 2008? Who do you think gave you that anonymous loan that saved you? His hand gripped the back of a chair. The loan that kept us afloat, that was you. Someone had to help my little brother. I looked around the room at faces frozen in shock. Anne, your medical research grant? Me. Marcus, your startup capital 5 years ago? Me. Jennifer, your law school tuition when your mother couldn't afford it? Also me. Anne pressed her hand to her chest. The grant application said it was from the Davidson Foundation. Davidson was my mother's maiden name. I named the foundation after her. Rachel was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Mom, why didn't you tell us? I tried, honey. Every time I visited, you were too busy to talk, too embarrassed to introduce me to your friends, too concerned about what Bradley thought. I turned back to my son-in-law. Bradley, you asked what you should tell your colleagues about me. How about this? My mother-in-law is one of the most successful real estate investors in the state. She owns 47 properties, including the building where my office is located. His face went gray. My office building. Thompson Realty rents Suite 304 from me. Has for 6 years. You're actually 3 months behind on rent, by the way. My property manager has been very patient. I can't. He looked around wildly. This is insane. You're making this up. I tapped my phone again. Siri, call David. Calling David Morrison, my phone announced. The call connected on speaker. Patricia. How's the reunion? Eventful, David. I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but could you confirm something for me? Of course. Could you tell everyone here what company you work for? I'm the CFO of Anderson Capital Group. Have been for 15 years. Why? Bradley sank into a nearby chair. And could you confirm the current value of our real estate portfolio? As of yesterday's close, we're at $2.4 billion in property holdings across 7 states. Patricia, is everything all right? Everything's fine, David. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend. I ended the call. The silence stretched so long I could hear the catering staff moving in the kitchen. Finally, my sister Anne spoke. Patty, all these years, why let us think you were struggling? I never said I was struggling. You all assumed. You saw a woman in simple clothes, driving an older car, living quietly, and you wrote your own story about who I was. I looked at each of them. I wore the same dress to events because it's comfortable, not because I couldn't afford others. I drove an older car because it runs perfectly fine. I lived in a studio because I don't need space. I need security and a view. But we could have helped you, Rachel sobbed. With what, sweetheart? I didn't need help. I needed my family to see me, to respect me, to include me without judgment. I turned to Bradley. Instead, I got this. Public humiliation at a family gathering. Bradley's hands were shaking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did? Or would you have just been nicer to my face while still believing I was somehow less than you? He had no answer. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Bradley, your lease-to-own agreement has a clause about character and conduct. Making a public spectacle like this violates it. You have 60 days to find a new place to live. Mom, no, Rachel cried. Please, we have children. I know, my grandchildren, which is why I'm not evicting immediately. 60 days is more than generous. I looked at my daughter. Rachel, you're welcome to stay. The house is yours if you want it. But Bradley needs to go. You can't do this, Bradley said weakly. I already have. My lawyer will send the papers Monday morning. I picked up my purse. Marcus, your business is doing well. Keep it up. Jennifer, congratulations on making partner. You earned it. Anne, your research is changing lives. Robert, your hotels are beautiful. I walked toward the door, then paused. I came to this reunion hoping things might be different, hoping that maybe, after 5 years, someone might actually want to know me instead of judge me. But Bradley is right about one thing. I am different from the rest of you. How? Robert asked quietly. I built my success without needing to make others feel small. I accumulated wealth without losing my humanity, and I helped my family without expecting gratitude or recognition. I smiled sadly. The biggest disappointment in this family isn't me, it's that you all thought I was. I left the grand ballroom, left the 73 shocked faces, left the family that had never really seen me. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. The 2005 Mercedes I'd kept because it was the last gift my husband gave me before he died. A text from Rachel. Mom, please, we need to talk. I replied, I'm ready when you are, sweetheart. I always have been. As I drove away from the estate, the one I had actually purchased 12 years ago and allowed the family association to use for reunions, I thought about Bradley's words. The biggest disappointment in this family. He was right. I was disappointed. But not in myself. I was disappointed that it took humiliation to make them see me. Disappointed that wealth mattered more than character. Disappointed that I'd spent 45 years being underestimated by people who were supposed to love me. But I wasn't disappointed in my choices. I'd built something real. Something lasting. Something that didn't require putting others down to feel tall. And if that made me a disappointment to them, then I'd wear that title proudly. Because some disappointments are actually victories in disguise. The baby shower was held at my daughter Sophie's house, a beautiful colonial in the suburbs with a perfectly manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. Pink and white balloons covered every surface, and 40 guests mingled in the spacious living room, cooing over tiny baby clothes and sipping mimosas. I arrived wearing my usual outfit, jeans, a simple blouse from Target, and my worn leather jacket that I'd owned for 15 years. My canvas tote bag, the free one from the public library, hung over my shoulder. Mom, Sophie greeted me at the door, her eyes quickly scanning my outfit. You made it. Wouldn't miss celebrating my first grandchild, I said, handing her a gift bag. She peeked inside at the handmade baby blanket I'd crocheted. Oh, that's sweet. You can put it with the other gifts. She gestured vaguely toward a table overflowing with expensive packages from high-end baby stores. My son-in-law, Trevor, appeared behind her, his arms sliding possessively around Sophie's waist. At 34, he was a corporate attorney who never let anyone forget it. Eleanor, he said, not bothering with Mom or even a hug. Glad you could make it. Sophie was worried you couldn't afford the Uber. I drove, I replied evenly. Still have that death trap from 2008, he laughed. One of these days, that thing's going to break down and leave you stranded. Sophie touched his arm. Trevor, be nice. I am being nice. I'm concerned about her safety. He lowered his voice, though not enough. Maybe after the baby comes, we should look into some kind of assisted living situation for her. Somewhere affordable. I was 68 years old, in perfect health, and still worked 50 hours a week. But I said nothing. I'd learned over the past 6 years of Sophie's marriage that arguing with Trevor was pointless. I made my way to the kitchen, where Sophie's friends, all dressed in designer labels, were preparing mimosas and petit fours. You must be Sophie's mom. A blonde woman in Louboutin heels extended her hand. I'm Melissa. Trevor has told us so much about you. Has he? I smiled, accepting a glass of orange juice. He mentioned you're going through a difficult time financially. Melissa's voice dripped with pity. It's so brave of you to come. These events can be intimidating when everyone else is so successful. Before I could respond, Trevor's voice boomed from the living room. Everyone, can I have your attention, please? He stood in the center of the room, champagne glass raised. I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate our little miracle. Sophie and I are so blessed. Great careers, beautiful home, amazing friends. The guests applauded. Now, I know some families have their struggles, Trevor continued, his eyes finding me in the kitchen doorway. Take my mother-in-law, Eleanor, for example. She's here today despite her circumstances. The room went quiet. Sophie's face flushed. Trevor, what are you doing? Just being honest, honey. Eleanor lives like a homeless person. Seriously, I've seen her apartment. It's a studio, 1 room. Can you imagine? At her age, she should have built something by now, but instead she's living in poverty. A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. She drives a car that should be in a junkyard. She shops at thrift stores. She brings homemade gifts because she can't afford real ones. He shook his head sadly. It's honestly depressing, which is why Sophie and I have decided to help. My daughter looked confused. Help? Trevor, we never discussed. I'm announcing it now. We're going to set up a small fund for Eleanor. Nothing major, maybe $50 a month so she can at least buy groceries without using coupons. He raised his glass higher. To family, even the disappointing members. The room erupted in awkward applause. I stood perfectly still, watching my daughter's face cycle through embarrassment, shock, and something that might have been shame. Trevor walked over to me, his smile wide and condescending. Don't worry, Eleanor. We'll take care of you. That's what family does, right? We support the ones who can't support themselves. How generous, I said quietly. I know it must be hard living like you do. That tiny apartment, that terrible neighborhood. You live like a homeless person, honestly. He patted my shoulder. But don't worry, once the baby comes, we'll make sure you can at least visit in decent clothes. The room was watching us now, 40 pairs of eyes filled with pity, judgment, and curiosity. I smiled, the same smile I perfected over 43 years in business. Trevor, could I ask you something? He looked surprised. Sure. Where do you live? The address? He blinked, confused. What? You know where we live. You're standing in our house. No, I mean your apartment. The one in the city. Your bachelor pad that you kept after the wedding. Sophie's head snapped toward him. What apartment? Trevor's confident smile faltered. That's not relevant right now. Humor me, I pressed. The address? I don't see what this has to do with. 847 Riverside Drive, Unit 12B, I said for him. Is that correct? His face went pale. How do you know that? I pulled out my phone. The iPhone 14 that Trevor had mocked me for buying, saying I was wasting money I didn't have on technology I didn't understand. I know because I own the building. I turned my screen toward him, showing the property management app. Riverside Towers, 42 units. I purchased it in 2019. The room went absolutely silent. That's impossible, Trevor stammered. I pay rent to Parkview Properties. That's my property management company, and I'm 7 buildings through it. I scrolled through my phone. You're currently 3 months behind on rent, Trevor. $8,400 total. My property manager has been very patient. Sophie's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. You're lying, Trevor said, but his voice shook. This is some kind of joke. Melissa, I called to the blonde woman. You're a real estate agent, aren't you? Trevor mentioned that. Melissa nodded slowly, her eyes wide. Could you look up the ownership records for 847 Riverside Drive? I handed her my phone with the property documents already pulled up. Melissa's fingers trembled as she scrolled. Her face went white. Oh my God. Eleanor Martinez, you own. This says you own property worth $2.8 billion across 3 states. I finished. Give or take a few million, depending on the market. Trevor grabbed the phone from Melissa. His hands shook as he read. No, this is fake. You work as a secretary. I'm the CEO of Martinez Holdings. I do keep an office at one of my properties where I handle administrative work, yes. Some people call that secretary work. I call it staying hands-on with my business. Sophie sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. The studio apartment, I continued. It's the penthouse of my building downtown. I converted the top floor into one open space because I like the layout. The 2008 car, it was my late husband's. He restored it himself before he died. I keep it running because it reminds me of him. Mom, Sophie whispered. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, sweetheart. Every time I visited, you were too busy. Too embarrassed to let me meet your friends. Too concerned about what Trevor thought of me. Trevor found his voice, desperate now. The thrift stores. Why would you shop at thrift stores if you're so rich? Because I find beautiful things there. Because I don't need to prove my worth through designer labels. Because the woman who runs the vintage shop on 5th Street is kind. And I like supporting her business. I looked around the room at 40 shocked faces. I don't live like a homeless person, Trevor. I live intentionally. There's a difference. Melissa was still scrolling through my phone. Eleanor, this portfolio, you own the Wellington building downtown, and the Riverside complex. And she looked up, stunned. You own half the commercial real estate in the city. About 40%, I corrected. I'm working on acquiring more. Trevor's confident facade had completely crumbled. Sophie, I didn't know. You have to believe me. My daughter wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. For what, honey? For being ashamed of you. For not defending you. For letting him. She gestured at Trevor. For all of it. I walked over and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. You didn't know any better. You married a man who taught you that value comes from appearances. That success means showing off. That helping family means humiliating them first. Eleanor, please, Trevor started. I was just joking around. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said, standing to face him. And now we're going to discuss consequences. His face went gray. What consequences? Your apartment lease is terminated effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. You can't do that. I absolutely can. Section 7 of your lease agreement prohibits subletting, which you've been doing, renting it out on airmen when you're here at the house. I have documentation. Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Additionally, your law firm, Morrison, Burke and Associates, rents their entire floor from me. I'll be discussing your behavior with the senior partners on Monday. They might be interested to know their junior partner is embezzling client funds to cover his gambling debts. How do you? He stopped, realizing, you can't prove that. I can, actually. When you use company credit cards at Atlantic City casinos, it leaves a trail. My accountant flagged the discrepancies 6 months ago. I've been waiting to see if you do the right thing. I smiled sadly. You didn't. Sophie was crying harder now. Trevor, tell me she's lying, please. He couldn't meet her eyes. Sophie, I said gently. The house you're sitting in right now, it's in foreclosure. Trevor stopped making mortgage payments 8 months ago. The bank is going to seize it in 60 days. My daughter's hand flew to her pregnant belly. What? But don't worry, sweetheart. I bought the mortgage last week. The house is yours. Trevor's name will be removed from the deed. You bought our house? I couldn't let my grandchild be born into instability. I turned back to Trevor. You have a choice. You can resign from your firm quietly, attend gambling addiction counseling, and I'll give you a reference for a new job. Or you can fight this, and I'll make sure every firm in the state knows exactly what you did. Trevor's whole body was shaking. This is blackmail. No, this is consequence. Something you've apparently never experienced. I picked up my library tote bag. Sophie, I'm going to leave now. When you're ready to talk, really talk, call me. You and the baby will always have a home. Trevor's welcome too if he gets help and proves he's changed. I walked toward the door, past 40 silent guests, past Melissa, who was still staring at my phone in shock, past the table of expensive baby gifts. Wait, Sophie called out. The blanket you made, where is it? I pointed to the gift table where my simple handmade blanket sat among designer items. She stood, walked over and picked it up, clutching it to her chest. This is the most valuable thing here, isn't it? Because you made it yourself. Value isn't always about money, sweetheart. I know that now. She looked at the room full of her stunned friends. I'm so sorry it took this long to see it. Trevor slumped against the wall, his perfect life crumbling around him. As I walked to my car, my late husband's carefully restored 2008 Mercedes, my phone buzzed. A text from my property manager. The eviction notices are ready to send for Riverside 12B. Proceed. I looked back at the house. Through the window I could see Sophie holding the blanket I'd made, tears on her face. I could see Trevor surrounded by guests who were already pulling away from him, phones out, probably Googling my name. I replied, hold the eviction, give him 60 days, and send him information for gambling counselors. Because that's what real wealth looks like. Not punishing people because you can, but helping them even when they don't deserve it, even when they called you homeless, even when they tried to humiliate you in front of 40 people. Because I hadn't built a $2.8 billion empire by being cruel. I built it by being smarter, harder working, and more patient than people who underestimated me. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply proving them wrong, then offering them a chance to do better. The retirement party was held in the conference room at Stellar Communications, the company where I'd worked for 40 years. Streamers hung from the ceiling, and a sheet cake sat on the table with Happy Retirement Dorothy, written in blue icing. 60 colleagues gathered to say goodbye. I stood near the window in my sensible navy dress, the same one I'd worn to countless office events over the decades. My practical shoes, my simple watch, my reading glasses on a chain around my neck. At 65, I looked exactly like what everyone thought I was. A woman who'd spent her entire career in the same position, never climbing, never achieving, just existing. Speech. Someone called out. My daughter Jennifer touched my arm. You don't have to, Mom. It's fine, honey. I stepped forward, but before I could speak, my son-in-law Derek raised his hand. Actually, if I could say something first, Derek didn't wait for permission. At 38, he was Stellar Communications Senior Vice President of Sales, a position he never let anyone forget. He'd married Jennifer 5 years ago, and I'd watched him slowly poison her against me ever since. I just want to take a moment, Derek said, his voice carrying that particular tone of false sincerity, to acknowledge what Dorothy represents. 40 years. 40 years in the same company, same position, same desk. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Some people climb the corporate ladder. Some people build empires. Some people leave their mark. He paused, looking directly at me. And some people just show up, day after day, year after year, doing the bare minimum, never taking risks, never achieving anything remarkable. Jennifer grabbed his arm. Derek, stop. I'm being honest, Jen. Someone needs to say it. He turned back to the room. Dorothy is retiring after 40 years, and what does she have to show for it? No promotions, no achievements, no legacy, just a gold watch and a pension. The room was dead silent. My point is, Derek continued, warming to his subject, Dorothy represents everything wrong with this generation. No ambition, no drive, just coasting along, taking up space that could have gone to someone hungry, someone with vision. My boss, or former boss. Richard cleared his throat. Derek, that's enough. Is it? Richard, you're the CEO. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me Dorothy contributed anything significant in 40 years. One thing, just one. Richard's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Derek smiled, vindicated. That's what I thought. So here's to Dorothy, 40 years and nothing to show for it. May the rest of us learn from her mistakes. He raised his glass. No one joined him. Jennifer was crying. My colleagues looked mortified. The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out. I stood there, letting Derek's words settle, letting everyone absorb what he'd just done. Then I smiled, the same calm smile I'd maintained for 4 decades. Derek, I said quietly, could I ask you something? He looked surprised that I was speaking. Sure. How long have you worked here? 8 years. Why? And you're the Senior Vice President of Sales. Very impressive. I nodded thoughtfully. Tell me, who hired you? Richard did. Everyone knows that. Actually, Richard interrupted, his voice tight, I didn't hire you. I approved the hire, but I didn't make the decision. Derek frowned. Then who did? I did, I said simply. The room went very still. What? Derek laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. You're an administrative assistant. You don't hire executives. You're right. Administrative assistants don't hire executives. I pulled out my phone, the smartphone Derek had mocked me for barely knowing how to use. But owners do. Owners? Derek's smile faltered. I turned to Richard. Would you like to tell him, or should I? Richard's face was carefully neutral. I think you should, Dorothy. You've waited long enough. I looked around the room at 60 faces, people I'd worked alongside for decades. People who'd watched me answer phones, schedule meetings, file documents. People who thought they knew exactly who I was. My full name is Dorothy Ann Stellar, I began. Stellar, as in Stellar Communications. My father founded this company 62 years ago. When he died 40 years ago, he left it to me, his only child. You could have heard a pin drop. But I didn't want to be the boss's daughter who inherited everything, I continued. I wanted to understand this company from the ground up. Every position, every challenge, every person. So I started as an administrative assistant, and I stayed there. Derek's face had gone pale. That's impossible. Richard is the CEO. Everyone knows. Richard is the CEO, I confirmed. I hired him 20 years ago to run operations while I focused on strategy and acquisitions. He's done an excellent job, but make no mistake, I own this company. Every brick, Every contract. Every employee. I swiped through my phone and pulled up a document. Including you, Derek. Your employment contract signed 8 years ago. Your salary, $240,000 plus bonuses. Your performance reviews, which have been declining steadily, by the way. Derek grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. You asked what I have to show for 40 years, I said. Let me answer that. I have a company that's grown from 12 employees to 800. I have annual revenues that increase from $2 million to $1.3 billion. I have satellite offices in 7 countries. I have 300 patents. And I have every single person in this room. My colleague Sarah gasped. Dorothy, you're the anonymous donor. The one who paid for my son's cancer treatment. I nodded. Your insurance wouldn't cover the experimental treatment. Someone needed to help. And my daughter's scholarship, another voice called out. That was you. The company has an education fund, I said simply. It seemed important. Richard spoke up. For those who don't know, Dorothy has personally funded employee education for 30 years. Over 400 employees have earned degrees on her dime. She just never took credit. Because it wasn't about credit, I said. It was about building something that mattered. About creating opportunities. About taking care of people. Derek had sunk into a chair, his face ashen. Jennifer, did you know about this? My daughter shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Mom never told me, never mentioned it once. Because you never asked, I said gently. You were so busy being embarrassed by my simple job that you never wondered why I stayed. Why I was content. Why I didn't need your pity. Mom, Jennifer whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, honey. I turned back to Derek. You said I represent everything wrong with my generation. No ambition. No drive, just coasting along. But here's what you missed. I built this empire while you were still in diapers. I created 800 jobs. I changed 800 families' lives. I did it quietly, without fanfare, because the work mattered more than the recognition. Why didn't you tell anyone? Someone asked. Because I wanted to see who people really were. When they thought I was powerless. When they thought I didn't matter. When they thought they could dismiss me without consequence. I looked directly at Derek. You learn a lot about people when they think you're beneath them. Derek tried to stand, stumbled, and sat back down. I didn't know. You have to understand, I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did? Would you have been kinder? More respectful, or just more calculating? He had no answer. Richard stepped forward. For the record, Dorothy has been planning her retirement for 3 years. We've been transitioning leadership slowly and carefully. She's trained me, mentored the entire executive team, and ensured this company will thrive long after she's gone. And Derek, I added, about that speech you just gave, the one about me taking up space, taking opportunities from people with hunger and vision. I pulled up another document on my phone. I've been reviewing the sales division's performance. Your division has declined 18% over the past 2 years. Meanwhile, your expense reports show $80,000 in questionable charges, country club memberships, luxury dinners, a company car you barely use for business. His mouth opened and closed. You asked what I have to show for 40 years. Let me ask you, what do you have to show for 8? Besides arrogance and a declining sales record. The room was absolutely silent. Richard and I have been discussing restructuring, I continued. The sales division needs new leadership. Someone hungry, someone with vision, someone who understands that success isn't about showing off. It's about showing up. You're firing me, Derek said flatly. No, I'm giving you a choice. You can resign gracefully, and I'll provide 6 months severance and a neutral reference. Or you can stay, and we'll conduct a full audit of your division and your expenses. Your choice. Derek looked around the room for support. No one met his eyes. The people who'd laughed at his jokes, who'd admired his success, who'd watched him humiliate his mother-in-law, they all looked away. I need to think about it, he said weakly. You have until Monday morning. I turned to the room. Now, I believe we were here for a party. And I have a few things I'd like to say about my 40 years with Stellar Communications. I spent the next 20 minutes talking about the people in that room, the colleagues who'd become friends, the innovations we created together, the challenges we'd overcome. I thanked them for their dedication, creativity, and loyalty. I told stories that made people laugh and cry. I never mentioned Derek again. He stood in the corner, forgotten, while I celebrated the people who actually mattered. When the party ended, Jennifer approached me. Mom, can we talk? We stepped into my office, the small administrative space I'd occupied for 4 decades. Photos covered every surface, not of me, but of employees, weddings I'd attended, babies I'd held, graduations I'd celebrated. You worked here, Jennifer said, looking around, in this tiny office, when you could have had anything. I had everything that mattered. I had purpose. I had community. I had impact. Derek's been telling me for years that you wasted your life, that you were a cautionary tale, that I shouldn't end up like you. She was crying again. And I believed him, Mom. I was ashamed of you. I know. How can you forgive me? Because you're here now. Because you're seeing clearly. Because you're my daughter and I love you. I pulled her into a hug. And because I remember being young and thinking success looked like corner offices and fancy titles. It took me years to learn better. What did you learn? That success isn't what you acquire, it's what you build. It's not about climbing over people, it's about lifting them up. It's not about being seen, it's about seeing others. Jennifer pulled back, looking at me. What are you going to do now? Really retire? I smiled. I'm going to spend time with my daughter. Watch her remember why she married Derek in the first place, or help her build a new life without him. I'm going to travel, read, maybe start a consulting business helping other companies build better cultures. And Derek? That's up to him. And up to you. I don't know if I can stay married to someone who would humiliate you like that. Then don't, but make that choice for yourself, not for me. We sat in my small office as the sun set through the window. My phone buzzed, Richard, asking if I was okay. Then Sarah, thanking me again for the medical bills. Then Tom from accounting, saying he never knew. Then Maria from IT, apologizing for not defending me. They're all reaching out, Jennifer observed. Because they care. That's what 40 years of showing up does. It builds relationships, real ones. Not based on power or position, but on presence and compassion. Derek appeared in the doorway, looking smaller somehow. Jennifer, we should go. I'm staying with Mom tonight, Jennifer said firmly. Jen, please. I said I'm staying with Mom. You can go home. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. He looked at me, something like desperation in his eyes. Dorothy, I'm sorry, I truly am. I didn't know. Derek, the saddest part isn't that you didn't know. It's that you thought it was acceptable to speak that way about anyone, regardless of their position or power. That's not a knowledge problem. That's a character problem. He flinched like I'd slapped him. But, I continued, character can change, if you're willing to do the work. Real work. Not just apologizing because you got caught, but genuinely examining why you felt entitled to diminish another human being. How do I do that? That's something you'll need to figure out. I'd suggest starting by asking yourself why you felt threatened by a 65-year-old administrative assistant. What that says about you, what you were trying to prove. He nodded slowly and left. Jennifer squeezed my hand. You were kinder to him than he deserved. Maybe, but I've learned that cruelty doesn't build anything, it just tears down. And I'm in the business of building. We left the office together, my office that someone else would occupy come Monday. We walked past the conference room where my retirement party had been held, past the cubicles where I'd spent 40 years, past the portraits of company founders that included my father, but at my request, not me. Mom, Jennifer said as we reached the elevator, 40 years and nothing to show for it. That's what Derek said. I remember. He was wrong. You have everything to show for it. This whole company, all these people, all these lives you touched. She pressed the elevator button. You built a legacy. No, honey. The elevator doors opened. I built a family. The legacy is just what happens when you do that right. As we descended from the 10th floor, the same elevator I'd ridden for 40 years, I thought about Derek's words. About how he'd meant them as an insult. About how wrong he'd been. 40 years and nothing to show for it. He couldn't have been more mistaken. I had 800 families who depended on paychecks I'd helped provide. I had 400 educated minds I'd helped shape. I had one daughter who finally saw me clearly. I had a company that would outlive me, built on values that mattered. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to diminish me, to make me small, to erase 40 years of quiet dedication, I had the truth on my side. Not the truth of power or money or position. The truth that real success is measured in lives touched, not titles earned. In communities built, not ladders climbed. In people lifted, not people crushed. Derek was right about one thing though. After 40 years, I had learned from my mistakes. I'd learned that people who measure worth by position are people who've never understood value. I'd learned that empires built on ego crumble fast. And I'd learned that the quietest voices often build the loudest legacies. As Jennifer and I walked to my car, a modest set-in Derek had once called embarrassing, me phone buzzed one more time. Richard. Board meeting Monday. We need to discuss Derek's replacement. Any thoughts? I smiled and typed back, promote from within. Someone who's been here at least 10 years. Someone who knows our values. Someone hungry. Richard. I have just the person. Dorothy. Thank you for everything. I put my phone away and looked at my daughter. Ready to go home? More than ready, Mom. Good. Because I think it's time I showed you my real office. Your real office? The penthouse downtown, where I actually run the holding company that owns Stellar and 6 other businesses. I thought maybe you'd like to see what 40 years of nothing actually looks like. Jennifer laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. And as we drove away from Stellar Communications, I realized something. Derek had asked what I had to show for 40 years. The answer was simple. Everything that mattered, and nothing he could ever understand.